literally, he was like, fuck it. And granted, it wasn't a one-time conversation. We spoke for probably a couple of weeks, maybe a month at that point, before he was like, all right, let's give it a shot. I think the way we both looked at it, we had nothing to lose, right? I'm in college. I'm trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. You know, he's a rapper living in, essentially homeless, living in a buddy's basement who took him in, and recording in the basement with like pillows as buffers around the microphone. No joke. And sleeping on the couch. So he was just like, let's give it a shot. And it, from day one, it was a great partnership, and things started to click. It was a really special time in the internet.
What is up, everyone? This is episode number 9, and today we are talking to the business side of Chris Zarou, the CEO and founder of Visionary Music Group. And this episode is all about the music industry, which is obviously changing a ton. First, this little thing called the internet happened. Then we had streaming. Now we have TikTok. And Chris has been there the entire time. So he got into the industry over a decade ago. And when I mean get into the industry, I mean a college kid who had just struck out an internship with every major label. So he decided to reach out to talent directly. He reaches out to this rapper Logic, who is homeless at the time, and the two strike up a relationship. Next thing you know, Chris is managing Logic. And fast forward to today, and Logic is a massive name. I'm talking Grammy nomination, platinum plaques, #1 records. And Chris is there to guide his career the entire way. And while he's doing this, he's also building his management company, adding new talent, and he signs a deal with Sony Records to start his own label. And all this is to say is that Chris has seen a lot. He's both found talent and broke talent at different stages of the music industry. And that's what I really wanted to get into in this episode. All right, enough from me. Before you go back, you know already what I'm going to say. If you could please subscribe. If you're on Spotify, please give me that sweet, sweet, sweet 5-star review if you're on Apple. And if you're on YouTube, please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. All the stuff means a ton. All right, back to the episode. All right, man, I am looking at the one and only Chris Zarou. He's got, 4 platinum plaques, 5 platinum plaques behind you right now?
Something like that. How you doing?
Is that how you just flex on anybody who doesn't live with you? It's like, oh, by the way, I'm kind of a big deal.
It happens to be positioned right behind my desk. So it's a subtle flex.
Okay, it's a subtle flex. While I was preparing for this, when the first time we got in touch, and it was me sending you guys this Facebook message because I wanted to collab with Logic, because I just looked at all of what our influencers, the audience we were acquiring, what they were buying, and Logic just kept on going up and up and up. And I said, how do we get in touch with this team? How do we work with them? And I think that's how we first started talking.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what year that was. 2017.
But let's set the stage. What is Visionary Music? And your role as president, founder, CEO? I mean, how many titles do you have there?
Founder, CEO. Visionary Music Group is an artist management company. I started when I was 19, and I had no intention of it ever being a proper business. It really just slowly turned into a business, and it's kind of evolved. So it's not only just a management company, it's a record company as well. I did a joint venture with Sony Music 2 years ago now. So we grew, but for the first 7.5 years, I had blinders on. I had 2 clients. It was Logic and Jon Bellion. And when I say it slowly turned into a business, it was just me, and I kind of built it out of my parents' basement. Shortly after, I met Harrison Remler, who you know really well. He's been with me ever since then. He's now the COO of the business. To be frank, didn't have intentions of building a business and didn't really know how. I was like, well, I think I know how to help artists acquire audience, and I know how to find eyeballs and ears on the internet, and that's what I did. And that slowly compounded, week over week, month over month, and it turned into a proper business.
And so there's 2 businesses there, right? There's the management side of the business, and then there's a label side of the business. Pretend I'm like Michael Scott. What are the simplest way to understand how those 2 businesses are different and kind of the same?
So they're really different in the sense of the role that you play. So as a manager, you're incredibly hands-on with the artist. A good manager is essentially the CEO of that artist brand. You're helping them as they grow and turn into a business, because that's ultimately what an artist is. You're helping them find team members. You need a business manager, which is just a music business term for an accountant. You need an attorney to help us along the way when we're doing, numerous deals. You're kind of interfacing with the record company, and then you bring everything back to the artist, and everything kind of flows through you. And a good manager will help that artist figure out the next step throughout their career, because any good artist career that's going to, have legs, is going to have to evolve and change and adapt. Manager, incredibly hands-on with the artist. Executive, absolutely, you're interfacing with the artist, but there's that manager in between you and the artist. So that's the big difference. So on my record company, I don't manage anyone but one artist that's signed to the record label. So a lot of my communication is going through management, and then they'll communicate through the artist. I have a great relationship with a bunch of the artists on the label, but generally you're speaking through somebody. And I'm used to that because I've played the manager role for a decade now. So the biggest difference is the way that the relationship and how you interface with an artist. Manager is hands-on, record executive is probably one step removed.
Got it. So you kind of play both of the sides. So you understand both the manager's problems, but also now as a label exec, what the problems are on that side too, right?
Correct. I had the opportunity presented to me. Rob Stringer from Sony Music reached out, and I figured, I was like, you know what? I learned so much from being a manager. There's a lot of great things that I experienced working with major record companies. And unfortunately, more often, there was a lot of negative experiences. So I was like, well, I could take all of that I learned and kind of be what I thought record executives should represent. So that was kind of the vision behind it. And to do what I think I know how to do and what we do well, which is artist development, which is building acts really slowly, developing them over time, which is really what the bread and butter of what I did with Logic and Jon Bellion. That was a long process, but I think that's the way you build a proper long career. And the funny part is, we're in a music ecosystem right now where things are just happening so quickly. Right. And I don't know if it's a great time for artist development, because, TikTok is just a beast in and of itself, and the way that it came in and disrupted the business even further than the business has already been disrupted in the past 5 or 6 years. It's sped a lot of things up. Things can happen really quickly.
Okay, I'll hype you up for a second. I don't understand how you're so good at finding talent. You found Logic. That was a fucking hit. And no offense to you, and you've said it yourself, you were a nobody at the time. You were tired in college. You were on rap message boards. This kid pops to you. I was on Hip Hop DX. I listened to that stuff. I didn't go off and start emailing people from Hip Hop DX and say, I should manage you. What popped for Logic? 2, who the fuck did you think you were to say, I'm going to go reach out to Logic and I'm going to manage this guy? Like, I just don't. Walk me through that, because then I want to compare that to where the music industry is now.
Sure. No, it's a great question. I didn't pretend that I was someone I wasn't. One of the first conversations I had with Logic was like, listen, I have no experience. Let me try and show you what I think I can do. Because I hadn't really proved it at that point. I thought I understood what was happening on the internet, and especially in that space of like developing artists and how to take an artist to the next level and build audience. So it was just pure honesty, right? I was like, don't worry about paperwork. We don't have to have that conversation. Just give me a chance, give me a shot, and we'll see what happens.
So and that's what, 8, 9, a decade ago? I mean,
a decade. Yeah, okay. A decade now.
There's a great, I don't have show notes, but maybe I do have show notes. I'll say it. In the show notes, we'll link to the How I Built This that Chris and Logic did, because this story is fucking bonkers. But you're in college, you start talking with Logic, and just, you're brutally honest. And then he just says, all right, let's do it.
Literally, he was like, fuck it. And granted, it wasn't a one-time conversation. We spoke for probably a couple of weeks, maybe a month at that point, before he was like, all right, let's give it a shot. I think the way we both looked at it, we had nothing to lose, right? I'm in college. I'm trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. He's a rapper living in, essentially homeless, living in a buddy's basement who took him in, and recording in the basement with like pillows as buffers around the microphone. No joke. And sleeping on the couch. So he was just like, let's give it a shot. And it from day one, it was a great partnership and things started to click. It was a really special time in the internet, in the up and coming artist ecosystem of the internet of 2011, late 2010, 2011. I call it the blog era. It kind of birthed a whole, group of us young managers and executives that are around today, and we all still talk about it. It was a beautiful time because it cut out the gatekeeper. And there was these blogs, one of them
Who was the gatekeeper?
Major record companies, established managers. The music business is such a tiny business. And it's so difficult to break in. I couldn't even get an internship because that was one of my first routes to get involved in the business. I got rejected from every record company in the business, every single one. And so it wasn't like I came strong in as like, I'm going to immediately just start reaching out. I was like trying to go the traditional route.
Sure, but your parents weren't record label execs. It kind of reminds me of the sports industry. Like the reason I got a job in the sports industry was I tricked my boss into thinking we were related. Like I was not, there was no way Ian was getting in on just like, hey, I'm a government major who likes sports. So anyway, you get rejected. And then these labels just didn't get that the internet was happening.
Not that they didn't get it. They didn't understand how to access it. They're playing a different game. We weren't selling music. So it was a really unique time pre the streaming era. There was nobody even said the word music streaming didn't exist. Right. The biggest music streaming platform at the time was probably YouTube, and which nobody was monetizing properly anyway. So nobody really cared about it. It was selling music via iTunes, and physical product was still a way that artists sold music at the time, right? Going to a big box retailer like a Best Buy or a Walmart and buying a Taylor Swift CD.
Oh, so I remember that. I remember that 50 Cent Get Rich Die Trying explicit version. I convinced my mom to get me.
I remember that too. That was a little bit early. I think that was 2003. But, and they didn't care about it. I can't say they didn't understand it. They didn't care about it. You couldn't sell music that way. So they didn't care about it. You could build an audience, which I care about. So I realized it's okay if I'm on these blogs and I'm discovering a lot of really great talent, marketing the talent via those blogs, and I'm building a real audience. We saw immediate feedback. If we put out a song or a video, the data spoke immediately. The number of views that video would have on YouTube, or the number of downloads a song would have. This is when you had like Mediafire links and stuff like that, because you couldn't stream stuff. You had to literally drag it into your iTunes and drag it onto your iPhone. So I knew it was working, and it slowly compounded because word of mouth came into play really quickly. I'm not going to lie, not everybody was part of that ecosystem on these music blogs.
And so when you say compounded, so you're this new manager for Logic, who is, as you say, homeless at the time. Not homeless, basically homeless.
Sure, yeah.
And you're emailing. Hip Hop DX was the one. I don't know if that's actually a music blog, but that was like one. That was the one for me that I was just religiously read. So you're emailing these guys and trying to get Logic's music put there. You're reaching out to the FaZe guys and saying, feature Logic in your YouTube videos. Is that what you're saying when you're saying it compounds and you're building the audience?
You built a genuine relationship with those guys who were running the blogs, built a genuine, authentic relationship with the FaZe guys. I was on Long Island at the time, like I said, building it out of my parents' basement. They happened to all be living their initial FaZe house, which is now like a wild mansion in the hills of Hollywood.
I know, it's crazy.
Was a little
it's
tiny
like $1 billion brand now.
Was a tiny little house on Long Island that G Fuel sponsored them and put them up in a house. And I was like, oh, you guys like 20 minutes from me.
Fuel deal.
So I would jump in my dad's car and like drive out and hang with the guys. But so it was authentic and real relationship building. And when I say compounding, that relatively small audience who checked those websites and those blogs, what I realized was like the ultimate passionate music consumer. And everybody knows those guys, those kids that the second you get in a car, they're like the aux chords kids. Oh, you got to hear this. You got to hear this, right? It was that demographic. It was those kids. So what started happening is they started spreading it via word of mouth. This community of people that were passionate, and we just saw it compound day after day. It was never an overnight thing, but it was just day by day. You saw social media following would go up, all the metrics that you could look at the time. And the data now is just phenomenal. Back then, like you should see the back end of Spotify and Apple Music that they give access to managers. Like it's unbelievable. I can see your age, where you're from, what city you're in, and what song you're listening to in real time. You didn't have anything like that. But the little metrics that we had, social uptick, right? Day after day, I'd refresh a YouTube video. Okay, it jumped this many views, and it was growing on a daily basis. And that's all I wanted to see. It was like, you had to, because it was so small that you had to pay attention to like small W's. And just, okay, if you put a little W up every single day, that over time turns to a really big W.
So what does those small W's, and then you get to the point where you're like, all right, logic is getting traction. I was right on this thesis of, we don't need to go to the traditional path. We can build this. Like, when did it feel real, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
It felt real when we properly monetized it for the first time. So like I said, we were giving out free music, right? That's why the record companies didn't really care, because they're looking at sales metrics. How much music are you selling? How many singles did you sell? Is it a regional thing? Is it happening on the East Coast? Is it happening in New York? Let me check Nielsen SoundScan to see how many singles you sold in New York. We didn't have any of that. We never sold music ever. So when it felt real was, and again, it was purely intuition based, because I didn't have regional data. I couldn't tell how many people were listening in Chicago, Illinois. I couldn't tell how many people were listening in LA. Sure. So it was more intuitive. And I remember calling him. I'm like, yo, I think we can tour. I think we can put a tour together. So found an agent, kind of routed a tour. And at the time, he had no history of anything, not only sales, nothing. So we couldn't even get a guarantee to go on the road.
You're flying blind to some extent. You're going intuition. We can feel it, but we're just going to walk into, I don't know, some city and see if we can sell out this venue. Like, how are you even getting the word out?
100%. And learning as I went, I joke now, like everything that we've learned, I feel like that me and some of my clients, we have like a Harvard MBA, because you learn so much by doing. It's the best way to learn, in my opinion. But sometimes when you don't know, you don't understand the risk. And that could be a benefit. That could be a benefit for an early entrepreneur, because now I've realized, like, I tend to overanalyze things, because you do know, right?
Right.
But back then you didn't understand.
You just have too much information. Like, you just talked about how great that Spotify information is. There's this Bezos quote: by the time you get, 80 or 70% of the information you need to make a decision, you've almost missed the opportunity to make the decision. Mm-hmm. And if you knew all the risks of you and Harrison and Logic in a car and how much of a shit show each of those stops were going to be, you probably would have maybe played it a little bit differently. But you were naive, but that naivete worked in your favor. It
was a superpower.
That's
right?
Fucking awesome.
Ignorance was a superpower.
How geeked were you when you go to the show and you see the live audience and you're like, these people on the internet that we've been talking to for a while are real, and the passion is real?
The greatest feeling ever. And it was the first time I got to see who his audience was, right? You didn't know who the kids were. I was like just staring at kids like, okay, this is what a Logic fan looks like. Again, the risk of that tour I thought a lot about it as we went into the COVID year, how lucky we got, to be honest, how many things worked in our favor, because, going into that tour, we had zero guarantees. So generally the way it works is you have tour history, you have a history of streams, a history of sales. A promoter will give you a guarantee. Worst case scenario, you don't sell any tickets. There's some security there, some insurance there. You have a guarantee. You're making X number of dollars, right?
Right.
Now, if you do really well in that market and you blow it out, you make an overage. That entire tour was what they call door deals. Not $1 guaranteed. If we didn't sell one ticket, we make $0. But we got like 85% of the door every night. That was the deals that we negotiated. So we crushed. We blew out every show. Had no idea at the time.
I remember one night at Bleecker Street Bar, RIP. So me and Chris and Harrison and the boys would go to Bleecker Street and have ourselves a night. But I remember just hearing your guys' stories of just these envelopes full of cash you guys were taking around with you everywhere. Because you have these, as you said, door-to-door deals, cash, and you're living in this van and you just have backpacks full of cash going from stop to stop.
Backpack full of like $70,000, $80,000. My way of accounting at the time was everything was in cash, because there were door deals. There was no wires. We didn't have anything. It was manila envelopes. So I had Denver, Colorado, literally would just write in a Sharpie on it. You settle the show, you count it. Okay, you're right. Close it, seal it. Right. Somebody wanted $20 for weed. I had a ledger of Sharpie on it, minus $20. I shit you not. And that's how we did the entire tour. and had it in one backpack, and would just leave the backpack in the corner of a green room and walk away. And yeah, it's what it's like being 21 years old on the road. Yeah, it was an awesome learning experience, because then by the next one came around, right? So much about the live business.
Right.
I learned a lot about the merch business. And then by the time, okay, it was time for Jon Bellion to go on the road, even more. And that's kind of been my entire career. It's just your knowledge compounds from experience.
And then fast forward, Logic, what, 2 Grammy nominations, plays at MSG. I mean, #1 album in the world. So this little fucking crew who had no clue what they were doing, and you guys scale that into what it is now. And I don't know. It gets me so excited when I hear something like that. You guys just fucking did it. And you had that moment. But then I think, kind of coming back to where we started this in terms of finding talent, the music industry obviously is changing a ton now. So you had that blog era, you called it. Now we're in the TikTok era, where TikTok is taking an artist from 0 to 100 in a second. And so how do you think about, as a label exec, but also as an artist manager, how do you think about this new music landscape where we've left the blogs and now we're into TikTok?
Yeah,
and streaming.
TikTok and streaming. The streaming was a slower evolution. I think kind of the TikTok progression happened a lot quicker. And all of those amazing accomplishments you were talking about, Logic and Grammy nominations and selling out arenas, none of that happened relatively quick. It was really slow, right? It was a slow build. Now things are happening literally overnight, and you have no choice but to adapt. And I'm still learning what the new music business looks like and how to operate in it and how to win in it. And I think because I can comfortably say that, I don't mind. And I think if any record executive or manager would say otherwise, I think they're lying to you. There's just so much disruption and innovation that has happened in the past decade of my career in this business. Probably 100 years of disruption and innovation got squeezed into a decade. Thank you to Daniel Ek, probably. And prior to that, Steve Jobs, who invented the sale of a digital song. Like, Ian, you were talking about buying a 50 Cent album. That was commonplace. Now, if I asked my little sister, she wouldn't know what a CD is. Like, they're making MacBooks. There's no CD drive. This isn't too long ago.
Yeah, it is crazy when you think of just where we are now. And I'm going to say something, and you don't have to necessarily agree with it. TikTok has, on one hand, these artists now who are breaking. There's a blend of influencer and artist. So on the positive end of the spectrum, Lil Nas X, real artist, but an influencer too. I mean, that guy knows how to play the internet with the best of them.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. 24K golden. Like, that guy is an artist first, but an influencer too. And what makes me nervous is, maybe not nervous, but TikTok has enabled a generation also of artists who, at least from the outsider, seem artist second. So I'm a really big TikToker. I'm a really big YouTuber. I'm going to fuck around and do a song. And to me, that would be very difficult if I was in the role of trying to find the next talent, of who actually is in this for the long haul and who is in this for a hobby because they want to be known as more than a TikToker, but they really don't have the chops. And deciding between those two people would be really, really tough.
I think if you have experience and a little bit of some gut intuition on how to identify talent, I don't think that's as difficult. But It's funny because I think so much, and you use the word influencer, I'll use the word creator.
That's a better word.
I think to be a successful artist now, you're a creator first. Your music, it is just marketing for your brand. That's where I think we're at. And because of what the creator economy has evolved into, there's so many ways to monetize your brand. You'd be a bad manager not to capitalize on the millions of ways that you can do that. From my experience, I think it has to be authentic.
Right.
COVID happened, right? We had Logic tours planned. We're getting ready to put out an album. The album ultimately came out, so I'm not going to hold it forever. Obviously, we didn't put up a tour. You have to get creative in ways to find out how to make that lost revenue. We had a Twitch relationship. Logic played TwitchCon the year prior. I knew some executives over there, and we started having the conversation. Again, authentic. Logic is a gamer. So a Twitch deal came about. And that's a unique, creative way for Logic to monetize his audience that we built over a decade.
Is it crazy to say that you are a creator manager?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because to your point, if music is an expression of your brand, you can go out and Logic's going to do a brand deal. He's going to do, maybe he does a Patreon, maybe he does different things. And your job as an artist manager is, okay, music is one source of revenue, but if we're creators and he has all these different revenue streams, your job is to put him in positions to make money and to express himself however he wants to. And that doesn't mean necessarily it always has to be music.
Correct. And so I don't think it's crazy to say that I'm a creator manager. I think a good manager will help that artist monetize their brand in ways that are authentic to them. And for every artist that I manage is totally different. I think that's where the world is moving, because when I started, you sold music or you sold tickets, and then maybe you sold merch, right?
Yeah.
That was it. And Ian, you and I have spoke, like you said, at Bleecker Street Bar, love dive bars, but
it's gone.
I know. Over the frustrations of some brands not understanding the power of creators and the ROI of partnering with the right creator, which I think is the key word. So yeah, I think that's evolved, and I think you have to adapt with it. And I think, to be honest with you, I think it's better for artists and creators, right? It's a great time to be a creator.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, you were recently on Business Casual, and you should check out that episode too. You talk about Damien, who's a guy you just signed, and he comes to you with an audience of almost 1 million followers on TikTok. And so that resource to already have that distribution ready to go is such a powerful way to remove, in some senses, same rights holders who maybe previously it was record labels, then it was the blogs were the deciders. Now it's you, but you're also beholden to the TikTok algorithm now. So now we're beholden 100%. To algorithms. Yep. But at least he's coming to you with his audience already there. And you found him, and I'm taking words out of your mouth, but you guys found him because a snippet of his song went viral, rapping in the backseat of his mom's car. Correct. Like, how crazy is that's where we're at now?
His second or third TikTok ever made, right? And obviously getting to know him and talking to him a little bit further through it, he was like, yeah, shit sucked. I just graduated high school and COVID happened and I was depressed and was messing around on TikTok and wrote a rap and went in the back of my mom's car. Now, what that showed is he's talented. It didn't go viral just by luck. It was very good. And then it happened again, and it happened again, and it happened again, because Damien's super talented. So that's the cool part about what we're living through. It's giving kids like that a platform to be discovered and build audience. But at the same time, it's really noisy, because there is kids like Damien who can just do that. Where 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, you had the gatekeepers that, well, no, I need to find you, and I need to give you an opportunity to succeed. So you need to sign with me, and we need to do the whole thing. And then I got to put you in the right places, and I'll get you on late night television.
But you have control. In that model, the labels have control, right? To some extent, where you can make sure a song gets heard on the radio to some extent. You can make sure that it could be a terrible song or not a great song, but if it's a big artist, I can make sure it gets radio plays. I can make sure you get distribution. Now, there's so much noise out there. There's not this one central place to get it. It must be harder than ever to make a song pop, universally.
I'll agree with that statement today, April, whatever it is, because it's happening in real time. So right now we're living through that. I don't know where this shakes out in 6 months, a year, 18 months, 24 months. So, and that's the cool part. I've been doing this long enough now that I realize things do happen quickly in this business. So it makes it unique. Like the movie business, which people, because I'll put in the entertainment bucket, is so fucking slow, right? I've had some experience in that business. things can come out a year and a half after they're shot and edited, and you go through that even music videos, it takes time, right? I could record a song and I could get it out in 24 hours less, right? So things happen so quickly. But yeah, I think there was a step-by-step plan and rule book and how to break artists that was the major label system, and that has been completely disrupted because they can't pick and choose. What I'm noticing that's happening is there's so much being distributed, and it's like, well, let's see what clicks, let's see what connects, right? And I'm getting used to that because so much of what I did was strategic. No, I think we're good at this. Let's identify a single. Let's shoot an expensive music video. Let's position it to be the focus track. There's a million and one examples. One example that sticks out to me, Roddy Ricch, The Box. That wasn't the focus track. That wasn't the single. It just happened.
Does that scare you a little bit? Because if I'm a label, or I'm a manager, you're in the reactionary role, right? Which is the right role to be in. Don't get me wrong. But as someone who would probably want to maintain as much leverage as I can and make sure my client is like, yeah, Chris always knows the right shit. Now you have to take a role of, let's see what the market says.
Yeah.
That would scare me a little bit.
And it's funny because one of my things I always say to my team is like, we don't react. That's not what we do. And now you have no choice. And so, yeah, you said, does it scare me? No, I mean, I don't get romantic about this. Business is business.
I do.
Right? Business is business.
That's good.
And only because I'm used to having to adapt and change. Like I said, I started my career, no such thing as music streaming. So I've witnessed it all.
Well, you also broke because of that. If the change hadn't happened, if you hadn't had this shift where the gatekeepers were changing, that created a market opportunity for you and Logic to do what you did, right?
Super fair. Yeah. And because it was changing from buying physical CD to digital music to slowly transitioning to streaming, it was this unique kind of bridge that was, well, no, people were putting out music for free on the internet, and going to datpiff.com and downloading mixtape was a real culture thing.
I was a LimeWire guy.
LimeWire was pre that, right? And that's how we built Logic's whole career. And then it's funny is with Jon Bellion, who's a pop artist, that was untraditional. I was like, well, we had this model at work with Logic. It's the same internet. Why wouldn't it work with a pop artist? And it worked.
So this is a tangent, and I just want to know what you have to say about this. So I follow you on Instagram. How many songs is Jon Bellion writing? Like Justin Bieber, there was one Instagram or a story you put out, and it was like the top 5 singles at the time. And Jon had like 2 or 3 of them, and he was the songwriter. I just want to understand how that whole industry works. So Bieber says, I love working with Jon. We vibe, brings him into the booth, and they write together. How does that side of the industry work? Because you just don't see it as much, but he is everywhere.
Jon it's a quieter side of the business. Jon is a world-class songwriter producer, and he's been on a 18-24 month just tear.
Heater.
What he's doing is so impressive, and he's established himself as a top songwriter in the world. So it happens, hopefully management has relationships. Jon's been doing this for 10 years. Jon has relationships. As a songwriter producer, you try and find your creative tribe that you vibe with creatively, and you make songs. And it could be what's called a pitch session, right? Where they'll go and just create something. And then you kind of sit with it after and you go, oh, this would sound great with Justin Bieber. This sounds great for Selena. And then the managers will step in and hopefully have those relationships and get them a song.
So pitch session in that it's Jon alone writing, and then you go out and pitch it?
No, it's always with collaborators.
So it's with Justin's people.
Or Jon's core group of people. Jon found a bunch of songwriters and producers that he really enjoys working with and writing with, and so it'll be with them, or it'll be a session with the artist. So you get a little bit of that artist energy and input into the song in the session, and that's how it's created. So, Justin might get in with Jon and a couple other people, and they'll go and create something for Justin. So it could be, either or. And songs sometimes bounce around, and it gets very political behind the scenes. I could talk about that side of the business forever. It's really interesting. Again, it's a little bit quieter, but it's really interesting.
It's quieter, and it takes a very self-confident person to do that kind of work, because if you have a massive ego and you see people just popping with stuff that you wrote, a confident, secure person is like, I was so glad to be a part of this. I brought this to life, and this artist, helped bring it to life. But a more insecure person might be like, I should be the one
I
charting
think
right now.
that's a good point, but I think if you have to know what you want, do you want that to
Right.
be your single or do you not? Right. And I think John's at a really comfortable place in his career and his life where he's super in tune with what he wants. So
Yeah, I respect it a lot. I think it's just a
yeah.
really cool side. And if you don't follow Chris, you should follow him, because it's just a different side of the industry where you just see the artist and you realize there's so many masters, songwriters, all these different now becoming assets that obviously hedge funds are jumping into, but like what that world is that makes a song come together. Because you only see Bieber puts out Holy, you don't know John's behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really it's cool. So getting back on track, this is every tech bro says this. And so I'm going to say it to you, and you're going to tell me what you probably already know what I'm going to say. But so Spotify particularly is in a tough spot. They are a great company, but they're beholden to the record labels to some extent on their unit economics. And so they're doing two things. One, they're pushing into podcasting hard. And I'm seeing it in my side of the business, where they basically want to become, if SeatGeek wants to sponsor a podcast, I go through them. They're the Facebook ads of the Spotify world. But then you have this artist side where they seem to be trying to create more of a two-sided marketplace, where they start to provide more services to record labels. But long term, does Spotify become a record label or move more into the record label business? Like, where do you see Spotify and also TikTok? Because on the other hand, TikTok is they, through their data, they know songs that are breaking for artists who probably don't even have labels yet, right? They
Right.
could see that Damien's popping. How do you think about those massive tech conglomerates and their role as becoming more of a label or manager?
I think long term, the ownership is going to shift to artists ultimately. I think
Right.
the idea of owning masters in perpetuity is archaic. I'm seeing it change to where it's a license, where the artist does own his music and they'll license it to the label for 10, 15 years, which I can see where it's going, right? That's the slow evolution of it. I think Spotify's pivoting because from my, I think business 101, right? You have to have ownership in something. And they didn't prior. And I think that was their aggressive play into the podcast space. And I think it's smart on Daniel's part, especially as the popularity of podcasts has continued to boom year after year. So I think that's a no-brainer, brilliant move. I think they really made a loud play, but with the Joe Rogan deal, and have done a lot more since then, which I'm sure you're super well versed on more than I am. So I think ultimately ownership is going to move back to artists, or for the first time, which is sad. And I don't know how a world where major record companies, Spotify and TikTok, coexist, but what I will say is they always have. It's happening right now, right? And prior to that, and YouTube plays a big role in the music business, and every social media platform plays a big role in the music business. So I think it's media and entertainment in general, and it's a marketplace. So they're always going to coexist. I think the less power and control that one of them has, I think it's better for the artist and it's better for the consumer.
And then is the label's role more as artist development? What does the modern day label look like then?
I think modern day, they haven't changed too much. I think ultimately it'll evolve into probably a marketing agency, because I think the role of, right, there's entire promo departments, and the word promo in the music business means radio promotion, right? Where where is that going, right? What is the importance of that as we move into 2022 and beyond? So I think ultimately they're going to be marketing specific, which I think is important, right? Going back to your point about Lil Nas X, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, he's not doing it alone.
No, he's
I
got
know
a
his
team.
I know his record company very well. They're in the Sony system. I work with them. I know the record executive at that company. They're brilliant people there. And that was really strategic and really well thought out. The rollout of his last single, right? With Mischief, who they're brilliant and we could talk about them forever.
I've said it on the podcast before. I genuinely think they're the most clever marketers
I've
the
ever
entire
seen.
internet. They're one of those people that when they do stuff, it makes me feel dumber and just like, why am I in the same game as them? Because their ability to do stunt marketing is just so next level.
Unprecedented. And I met with Gabe a couple times, like 2.5 years ago. And I was like, fuck, this kid's smart. I had him in my office a couple of times, and I was gonna go to their headquarters. I think it's in Brooklyn, and just brainstorm. We were just gonna shoot the shit because I just wanted to be a part of that creativity. It's God, they're brilliant what they're doing. But yeah, so that's not luck. It's strategy, and that's always gonna play a role because, and I could argue that it's more important than ever because it's noisier than ever. How do you cut through the noise? Outsmart everybody.
To me, it's the top tier labels. The people who are really good at it are more valuable than ever. And the people who are just, their job previously is to get on the radio or just do the traditional path. It just isn't going to play anymore. In my world, there's more money than ever coming into the influencer space. You listen to The Ringer right now, you got Allstate ads, you get Geico ads. Blue chip brands are entering the space. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to break through, you have to take your stuff to the next level. You have to, SeatGeek build a basketball court in these guys' backyard, SeatGeek court for the NBA 2K gamers.
Yeah.
We have to do different. Cody Ko, Noel, we partner on their music video. One day we'll get in a visionary music video. But the point being is, because it's more noisier than ever, you can't just spin up some Facebook ads and Twitter and Instagram ads. That's my world of almost like radio, where that's table stakes. It almost doesn't even matter anymore. And if you're going to break through, you have to figure out, what am I going to do that's next level?
And that's where I think the smarter creative managers, artists, executives, labels will prevail because, it's only going to get noisier. Right. I have conversations with some of my team on a daily basis. I don't see a world where it doesn't get as cluttered and noisy. There's more options. There's more just scrolling. What I noticed is a couple years ago, it wasn't so crowded that you'd have the time and want to slow down and dig deeper. And that's so important for artist development or a brand, a new brand. If you discover an artist via a song, let's say somebody shared it in an Instagram story or in the back of an Instagram video, and it catches your ear and you like it, you'll click on it, find out who the artist is. Maybe you click through his page, maybe you follow on Instagram, then maybe you go a little bit deeper. On their profile, they have a Spotify link. You click through the Spotify, you see what else they have. Right. Maybe you follow them on Spotify. So then you get pinged in the future, can follow their journey. What I'm seeing, and this is purely intuitive, I don't have the data to back this up, that diving deeper is slowing down dramatically. It's dramatic. Yeah. Even on TikTok, we all know TikTok is breaking records, but you probably have to hear a sound 27 times before you go deeper on it. You don't hear it once and like, oh, that was interesting to me. You just keep going, right?
Right. I think, yeah, I agree. One of the ways I think about it is just how much harder it is. Like every year a follow is just so much harder to get. For someone, I remember when I first got Twitter, I followed fucking everyone. If you had a basic ass tweet, I'm following it. And now to earn a follow from someone, you have to provide, and you brought this up before, you have to provide good content, but in a specific niche that really hits hard. You can't just be, a mile wide and an inch deep. You really have to focus on these niches, because otherwise the value prop just isn't there for the audience. To earn that follow is just so much harder now than it's ever been. You
Well
have to
said.
have
And
a very coherent value prop.
well said. And I think also now the algorithm's playing a big role, right?
Oh, totally.
I tweeted out recently, the algorithm is a new gatekeeper. It truly is, because the more conversations that I have with people on a daily basis, so how are you discovering new music? Your mix daily, right? The Spotify algorithmic playlist is one of them. And then TikTok, you're beholden to the algorithm, right?
It's crazy.
Nuts, but it's the world we're living in.
I posted, this would be a good plug for my TikTok. I went to, so 2 nights ago.
You have a TikTok?
It's just clips of this show, so you'll make an appearance. I don't do any dances yet. I'll do dances if I hit 10,000 followers. So I have 2,000 followers. A week ago, I had 0 followers. Nobody knew who I was. I posted this clip of me and Josh Richards saying why Josh Richards doesn't party. That clip, so I had no followers, now has 800,000 views on it. How did it get out there? How did they find the Josh Richards people?
The algorithm likes Josh.
Yeah, Josh, good looking TikTok kid. He plays well. But I literally posted it. I watched for 10 minutes. It had 0 views. And I was like, fuck this. I'm going to bed. And I woke up, and 2 days later, I checked the video. So I had no clue it even had happened. And then, because I noticed our podcast charts, the Josh Richards episode was doing well. I was like, that's weird. Posted that 2 weeks ago, and it was the algorithm. And so it was just crazy to me, because the similar thing doesn't happen on other social medias. You can't post a tweet and then Twitter's going to find the right people for your content. It just doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. And it's a powerful app. Like, back to my point about Damien, the beginning of COVID, being frustrated and depressed that, his senior year of high school was taken away and all that comes with that. So I'm just going to go rap in the back of my mom's car. Boom.
It's just, it's crazy, but then it's scary.
6 months later, he's sitting in my office. We flew him to New York. He's signing a record deal.
It's the new American dream.
It's
beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, but it's just scary because the algorithm is just so all powerful and it's such a black box. But this new age creator realizes they need to own their audience. And so they're moving to ways where they're not as dependent on the algorithm to do it.
I love that. And the one thing, I think you had asked me a couple times, and I probably haven't bit, or I genuinely you can't romanticize it, right? The business is the business. The one part that makes me a little bit scared for where artist development is going, the music business is going, back to the Logic and Jon Bellion story, right? It was slowly compounding year over year, and it took years. Logic didn't have his global superstardom moment until his 3rd album. At that time, he's a veteran.
Yeah.
Pressure doesn't bother him. Performing to sold out arenas was his everyday thing, right?
Yep.
So when we got the call, Grammy nomination, Song of the Year, they want you to perform at the Grammys, cool, just another day, right? Me as well. I had the experience.
You were ready to go.
Alongside him.
Long day since the back of a minivan with a bunch of cash in your backpack.
Long time ago since then. So what happens now when TikTok decides this is the one we're going to take, and it goes, and those opportunities still come. Hey, late night wants you. Kimmel wants you. Fallon wants you.
Addison Rae was just
VMAs want you.
She was a single. She was just on Fallon last week, I think.
And I won't speak to anyone in particular. Are you prepared for those opportunities? Because it'll show. It'll show.
That's
why I love sports. That's why I love sports. It'll show. Are you prepared for that moment or not?
The tough part is, though, you don't totally have a choice. I mean, you do, but if you get invited to Fallon, right, are you going to turn that down?
Could be strategically smart.
Could be. No, you're right.
If I'm part of your team, let's see if you could perform.
Yeah.
The first time Logic did late night, he was fucking having a panic attack backstage. By the 2nd, 3rd, 4th time, just another day.
Right.
You got to go through those moments, right? And he had performed 300 cat rooms, 500 cat rooms, 2,000 cat rooms. So the progression to the arenas was just a natural progression. It was natural. LeBron James was playing. He was the most prolific high school basketball player in the history of basketball. He's being televised on ESPN, and he's playing through sold out gymnasiums all over the country. So when he's 18 years old and it's his, rookie NBA season, it's not that different. And he can handle that pressure, right?
That's a tough place for a manager to be, though. That's tough because you got a giddy kid who thinks he's on top of the world. He's untouchable. And to your point, that moment is scary. That hits you, and it's not real until it's real. And then when it's real, everyone in the world is watching.
So that's the one thing that concerns me a little bit.
Okay.
Because if you're thrust out into those moments, what happens to artist development?
Yeah. I mean, that's where the label and the manager is more important than ever, right?
Correct.
Because they've been there and done that before, hopefully, and they're not just signing by, some random guy. They know he's legit. So I asked this to everyone because, and I always say this, but we just spent the last hour hyping you up and how smart and great you are. What would be something you regret or something you wish you went differently in the past year and a half? Because everybody talks about wins. Not enough people talk about failures.
Great question. God, there was a lot, so many of them, right? To be frank, and this is going to sound cheesy and corny, and I don't have regrets because it's the way we learned. My clients will tell you the same thing. Right. We sink or swim, right? One great example, and it's how I built my whole company, right? Harrison, he's always with us when we go out and have a beer. That's why I keep bringing him up. He was tour managing the first Logic tour ever. I did the first 10 days, and I was like, okay, I'm busy. I have a lot of business to handle. I need to get back. He was 18 years old. He was younger than all of us. And he was interning. And I was like, Harrison, you want to tour manage? He was like, sure. I was like, all right, fuck it. Sink or swim.
How ridiculous that is.
Threw him out on the road. I was like, mirror me for the first 10 days. I'll kind of show you. It was my first fucking tour. I didn't particularly know what I was doing. Right. Yeah. So it was just sink or swim. So yeah, I don't really have too many regrets because we learned from all of them. And I think it's what got us to where we all are. So.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think to your point, it's one of those things where I think about it a lot where you can always tell yourself why to not do something, but if you actually do it, worst case scenario, it fails. And then you can say, okay, but you can build from it. And it is such a cliche, but it is actually true.
It's so true.
It's so true because I wanted to do a podcast for 2 years and I finally am trying to do it. And listen, it works. I don't know, but I'm at least, it's going to take me somewhere else. That's going to be exciting for me. I get to talk to people like you and have these conversations. And, I'd rather do that than just regret when I'm 40, not talking to some of the smartest people in the industry and trying to spread that word.
Sink or swim. You're dove in.
Sink or swim, man. All right, everyone. That was the episode. I hope you guys liked it. If you couldn't tell, I just love talking to Chris. Before I leave you, I'm going to get on my knees and beg like I always do. If you're on Apple, please give me a 5-star review and subscribe to the podcast. If you're on Spotify, click that follow button. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. All these things make the algorithm like us more, which in turn makes the podcast bigger, which in turn inflates my ego. And we all want that. Okay, enough of that. I'll see you guys next week.